What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would be amazing. This week's audiobook recommendation is from our guest today, Wendy Nyx, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Big Magic is like a pep talk for your creative side, and in the book, Gilbert convinces us to let go of fear and perfectionism and just dive into whatever makes us happy. It's a fun read that encourages us to embrace our inner artists, even if we're just doodling in a notebook or dancing in the living room, which I personally really enjoy doing. It's all about finding the joy in creating new things. So head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/audible trial to start your free trial and download Big Magic completely free and help support the show in the process. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, and Kevin for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you can become a patron for as little as $3 a month. That is less than $1 an episode. And if you do that, you'll get some sweet, sweet perks for your support. And of course, if you think this show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. All right, now I got that out of the way. I am so excited to have a guest on today, Wendy Nyx, who was introduced to me by a mutual friend, Janil Dalal from the Design MBA podcast. If you haven't listened to his podcast, please go check that out because it's a fantastic show. Wendy Nyx is the co-founder and creative partner at Primitive Spark, a design studio that specializes in creating research-informed digital products and experiences. Wendy started out her career as a designer in Argentina before settling in Los Angeles. She takes a collaborative approach to design, guiding cross-disciplinary teams and clients towards sophisticated, practical, and intuitive human-centered design solutions. And she is constantly learning not only from books and the interweb, but also from those who she helps unfold. Wendy, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you on. How's it going?
Hi, Jeremy. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much. So I'm really excited to chat with you today. We had a little talk a couple weeks back. I can't remember exactly when. And I actually should have recorded that talk. That would have been even
Right?
an awesome episode by itself. We probably talked for like almost an hour. But Wendy, I'm really excited to talk to you today about finding your core values, bringing your authentic self to work, and just making sure that you're just happy doing the things that you do every day. But before we get into that, I know I read that little bio a second ago, but tell us a little bit about you. How'd you get into this business, and how did you end up on this show today? The roundabout way.
Man, that's a long.
It's a
I
big
was
long.
thinking about that one time. I was like, oh my God, I've lived like so many lives already. But yeah, you talk a little bit about my Argentina side there.
Yeah,
I
that's
grew up
cool.
in Argentina.
Oh, really?
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I didn't come to the States until after college,
Wow. You
and
don't have an accent that I can detect at least.
yeah, yeah. So it's sometimes I say specific words and they sound kind of funny, and nobody tells me because they like it. So
Yeah.
I just keep that. But yeah, so I was born here, and my parents went back to Argentina when I was 6.
Ah, okay. Okay.
They are from Argentina, and
Got it.
so I grew up over there. But I think that the language patterns got set when I was little, and even though I didn't speak much, it all just like
Mm,
magically came back.
that's
And
fascinating. Yeah.
so I think that's why I don't have much of an accent, or I have a good ear for languages, which is another part.
It's a good
But
thing to
yeah,
have.
so I was a graphic design, or I studied graphic design, and I was at a graphic design studio all through my college years. So it was kind of a fun time for me of learning and doing at the same time. And then when I came to the States, everything was like computer based and whatnot, which wasn't in Argentina. So I had to kind of like relearn the whole
Oh,
business
wow.
basically
Yeah.
and by doing it in computers. And then I guess I liked it, or I was really good at it. I don't know, but I ended up being 100% digital. So
Wow.
that's how I ended up here. And now I have this great little studio with my business partner from, I don't know, we've been working together for so many years. We started working together at the LA Times, where I was the new media director,
New media. I love we used to call it
design
new
director.
media.
Yeah, I was the new media department, and that's where we did the first LATimes.com. So
Yeah, I love it.
Chris and I were in that team,
Yeah,
and we've
I
been working. Yeah, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
And we've
Sorry.
been working together ever since. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's a little bit
Yeah,
about me.
I used to work in advertising, and we used to call it like traditional design.
That's right.
Traditional design and new media, it's so funny. And now I can't even imagine a world where we don't have any kind of digital thing. It's just so funny to think about traditional versus new. And, I don't know. Anyway, it's hilarious when you say
Yeah,
it.
and our kids, they've grown up with this existing since the beginning, right?
That's
And
amazing.
and
Yeah.
like I remember just like spending hours and hours and hours in the library, just like learning everything I could because there was no other way.
Exactly. That's so funny. Yeah, I don't know, kids, it's just amazing, and they pick it up too so fast. Like just the stuff that
So
it took me
fast.
years to figure out. I can't imagine. I don't know. I remember taking typing in high school on a
Yeah.
typewriter. Dating myself here, but it was just clacking away on an actual typewriter, and
Yeah.
nowadays I imagine kindergartners are probably coming in sometimes already knowing how to type on a keyboard. It's just amazing.
Well, you're
Um,
talking about high school. I did in Argentina. I was in the dictatorship years. We did this underground magazine,
oh wow,
and it was all actually that's what got me into graphic design because I had
that
um,
is fascinating.
we were doing this underground magazine, and everything was like you said, type it up, on typewriters,
Hmm.
doing illustrations by hand, and then we had to, send it to print. But the magazine ended up in the hands of a graphic designer that had this little studio, and he hired me after high school to work there while I was going to design school. So that's how I actually started because of that little magazine we were doing in high school. So yeah.
That is fascinating. Actually, I could talk to you for hours about that. So that was
I,
Pinochet. Is that was it
no,
Pinochet? Right?
Pinochet
Was
was in Chile.
Chile? Okay. What was the
In
dictator?
Argentina, it was like a triumvirate, whatever they call it,
Oh, they
with
had a
three
bunch of several.
people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was
All right.
a it
Yeah.
was La
Okay.
Junta, it was called.
Yes.
And
Okay.
I hope I don't get any cease and desist messages now.
Oh,
We
geez.
certainly did. We certainly did when we were doing the magazine.
Yeah. Wow. So that's crazy. And you could have, I imagine, gone to jail as a political prisoner. I would assume if
Or
you got caught
disappear.
in high
They
school.
disappeared
Disappeared. Right.
people.
Just
They
disappeared.
they
Yeah.
just
Jesus.
yeah, there was like no real official jail or anything. Constitution was
Yeah. Oh
invalid,
my God.
because it
Yeah.
was martial
God. So
law.
fascinating.
So
Sure.
yeah.
And you grew up in that, and that's how you ended up getting into UX design. So everything we talk about today just seems like less, so inconsequential from what you experienced. That's amazing. Wow, we didn't get a chance to talk about that last time we spoke. That's like
No.
that alone is fascinating. Well, so let me ask you this: you ended up getting into graphic design, and a lot of folks of a certain age, myself included, there wasn't really UX design to get into in the early
No.
2000s. I'm not sure how long you've been doing this, but how did you end up in UX specifically or in software, coming from that
Yeah.
graphic design background?
Yeah. So like I said, I was in the States after, living my primitive life in Argentina. And when I was taking design classes here at UCLA Extension, one of the classes was this portfolio and internships class.
Okay.
And so they helped you put your portfolio together and help you get internships. And I ended up in an internship at the LA Times where they were first
Okay.
starting to do that online, or it was like on Prodigy, putting the newspaper on Prodigy, which is an online system for all of you that don't know. It was CompuServe, Prodigy,
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
America Online.
Yep. That's all you got online. Yep.
Talking about dating ourselves here,
Oh my
Jeremy.
God. Yeah,
So
it's
anyway,
so this is really funny. We were
mm,
watching a movie the other day, and with my kids, and it was like a kids movie, and they did the modem noise, from like
oh
the early
yeah,
internet, and they were like, "Oh, that's a silly sounding noise." They had it's just like they had no idea. They just laughed because they thought it was like the robot was messing up, and like, "Oh, that's silly noise." I'm like, guys, he's connecting to the internet. Like that's what he's doing. Come on, get it.
that's
Anyway,
right.
it's really funny.
That's right. The
Yeah, well, you got
handshake,
mail.
what
Yeah,
they
yep.
call the
Oh
handshake.
man, that's
Yes.
so funny.
Yeah. So, anyways, out of the internship, I actually, during my internship, this is a funny story. They asked me to design the interface for the newspaper on this Prodigy system because they wanted to sell it to the publisher of the LA Times as a project,
Uh-huh.
internally, right? So my
Yeah.
boss was like, we have to do a really good job here because we need to, sell this project internally to put the
Mm-hmm.
newspaper online. And I was like, oh, okay. And so
Yeah.
when we were all done with the design, she's like, okay, the meeting is on this date, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, are you going to be able to be there? And I'm like, oh, excuse me? I mean, these were all like the top level people. And I'm like the intern, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And and she's like, yeah, I want you to present your design to the group. And I was like, what? Me? So anyway, but that's how I got the job, right? Because then when they
Yeah.
got the project, they said, okay, well, nobody's
Now we
better
need you to do
qualified than you
it.
to
Yeah.
actually run the project, on the
That's
design side.
awesome.
And
That's
so,
really cool.
I was able to build my team and everything. And obviously, if I hadn't had the experience that I had in Argentina, where I was running groups and, like teams of people, and I had
Yeah,
a
so
lot
you
of
had some
experience with
experience leadership.
managing
Yeah.
and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If it wouldn't have been for that, I wouldn't have gotten the job.
Yeah.
But
And I imagine a lot
hey,
less pressure than trying to avoid the junta and getting disappeared and stuff back in Argentina.
yeah, for
If
sure.
I had to guess, so that's really cool. Yeah, and back in the day, correct me if I'm wrong, but Prodigy AOL they had their own pages that you could design and build inside of their little network. It wasn't like a browser like website you would
Oh
travel
yeah,
to
yeah,
from
yeah,
it,
yeah.
right? So like
And
yeah, the Prodigy stuff was like its own little closed
Prodigy
ecosystem.
had their own proprietary graphic system, and the
Oh
files
wow,
were called naplips, and they were 16 colors. So we had to
16-bit. Yeah, that's
draw
it.
these
Yeah.
things. No, no, not 16-bit.
Just 16
16
colors.
colors,
Right. Okay.
specific colors that we had to design with. And so we
Gosh.
had to draw everything. And there were like no photos when we started. Then they started
Yeah.
introducing photos, but it was just
Yeah.
really
Advanced.
primitive. Yeah.
Yeah. Kids today, they don't know how
Yeah.
good they got. So, well, that's fascinating. So, as I'm listening to this story, kind of a lot of the stuff that we talked about last time about finding yourself and your value and bringing your core values to work. It sounds like a lot of this influenced that mindset, and so I want to dig into that a little bit. One of the things I was really excited to have you come on and talk about was this idea of how we show up at work and our core values and the things that we present to the workplace, how we show up at work. And I'm curious, like I want to kind of think about how that evolved for you. As I'm hearing a lot of your background and stuff, it kind of makes a lot of sense to me. It sort of, it's not a surprise, I guess, that this is like kind of like your perspective now. But I'm curious, like some of the stuff you've been through. I don't know, this is sort of a leading question. I don't even know how to ask this question, but how'd you come to this idea of just the importance of having these core values and bringing this to work as your authentic self?
Yeah. Actually, it's a great way of looking at it. I don't think I ever thought about it that way, to tell you the truth.
Really?
But yeah, because, I am who I am. And
Right.
I do, like one of my core values is this authenticity, integrity, honesty, whatever you want to call it, of just showing up the way I am. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that did start, way back when we were saying, well, this stuff is not okay, that these things are happening is not okay. And we are going to create a vehicle to say these things, right? And like you said, it wasn't about, can you keep your job or not? It was almost like life and death. But when you're a
Your
teenager,
life,
you
yeah.
don't understand the dangers
Right. You
of
think you're
that,
invincible,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like I'm looking at it now and I'm like, we were absolutely nuts of doing what we did. But
I imagine your
like with
parents
my
didn't
kids,
know. Your
oh,
parents probably had no idea. I assume, right? They're probably
they
like scared.
had an
They just
idea,
knew that.
obviously. They did have an
Uh
idea. My dad actually was one of the collaborators for
huh.
the
Okay.
he contributed to like poems and stuff to the magazine, which was really
Oh wow.
amazing for
Yeah,
me.
that's awesome. Yeah.
But I don't think that they really understood the edge that we were, or the boundary that we were crossing there. But going back to what you were saying about, how what is important to you, and how you bring that with you. Like I had this thought one time, I think it was after we talked, this idea of bringing your values to work day. It's like,
Yeah,
what
like a
is it?
presentation kind of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or something, like I'm doing this because this is really aligned with who I am and what my values are, and this is how I'm showing up. And, people may like it or not, right? Because sometimes when we're showing up at work with our authentic self, it might ruffle some feathers for people,
Sure.
or they might say, no, no, you have to be quiet. Don't, rock the boat, all of these things. But it's getting in the way of you actually being who you are, people seeing that, because when you are who you really are, it's magnetic. Like you will attract these people that are in line, that are aligned with you and with your values. And, and it works both ways, right? Because you can say, okay, how do I realize, or how do I find out what my values are? Because you have them, you just maybe never put the words together to
Yeah.
identify them. And so a good way of going about that is like, what are the things that you do that you're really proud of? Right? Because if you're proud of, it's because you have that alignment with your values, right? And you can start saying, oh, okay, well, I'm really proud of how I treat people. I'm kind, I'm honest, I am empathetic. Okay, there, you have a few values there. You know, I'm proud of my designs, because they're very detailed, or they're very, okay, so, attention to detail, or, focus, creativity, inspiration, like you get a kick out of getting inspiration from places and then bring it into your designs, whatever it is. That's
Yeah.
one way of just kind of going towards like identifying your values. The other one is like what you admire in others, right? Like, uh, you know, my business partner Chris, I think that he's just like one of the kindest, funniest, uh humble people I know, right? And that really just like inspires me. I admire that, and I want to be more like him, right? So those can be some aspirational values for me. And then the other part, and so that's why I was saying that it's kind of magnetic, because, when he is like that, I want to be like that. I want to be around him, right? I want to work with him. So, it's that kind of magnetism. And
Yeah.
then I think that another part that also can show us our values is like when we are upset or angry about something, it's because there are these boundaries that we have that are being crossed. And our boundaries are made out of these values that we have for ourselves, So if respect is one of my values and someone is walking all over me, I'm going to get mad about that. And it's because this boundary is being crossed. And so you can say, okay, this is really important to me. That's how these things come to life, or come to light, I should say. And then, you can say, well, this is really important to me. I'm being disrespected at work every single day. I am done with that. I am not going to take it anymore. And I'm not saying, just like start throwing things, right? I mean, let's
Yeah.
we have to be
Be
mature
professional
about
about it.
how we go about things, but having an uncomfortable conversation with someone and saying, look, I don't know really how to talk about this, and I'm going to fumble through this conversation, but I really need to talk to you about this because I really can't continue working this way. It's really affecting my work, my productivity, my focus, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And and that's kind of how you can, go about one, bringing your values to work in a very authentic and just showing up. And then the other one is when these things are being presented to you that are not working for you. And you say, well, my values are really clear to me. This is what I need. This is what I'm not getting. This is what I can do about it. And so being in that empowered place to do something about that. Anyway, I've been talking nonstop.
Yeah, no, that's great. You mentioned something I want to kind of go back to a second, was the Bring Your Authentic Self to Work Day. It reminds me of something. I have a buddy who works at Chewy,
Mm,
and Chewy.com, and one of the things that they do every time somebody comes on board, they ask them to fill out this sort of cheat sheet, like a
hmm.
personality cheat sheet, right? It's like, how do you like to communicate? How do you like to work? What's the best times for you to work? You morning person, night, evening person, whatever. Do you like IMs? Do you like email? Do you like to turn your camera on? Like things like that.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
might do like a personality test. I can't remember, and they put their Enneagram or their high C, low
yeah.
high D, whatever it is. Like if they do a disc assessment, I can't remember if they do that. But anyway, and then that way they have like a repository of all these people. So as you on board, you can read through everybody else's, and you can kind of see like, oh, Wendy likes this, Jeremy likes that, and so like if I'm going to reach out to Wendy, make sure I she likes phone calls. So let me like make sure I call her on the phone or do a huddle or something versus a Slack message. So
Right.
anyway, kind of thought made me think of that. But I love that idea though, like like having a day where we just sort of celebrate everyone's uniqueness, and their
Yeah,
authenticity. I really like that idea.
yeah. I've read about that before too, of companies that do that. And they actually, for places where you're in person, they actually have them on their wall or their cubicle or whatever, so that when people approach them, they can actually, read the few things that, how do you like being approached, or how you like being communicated to, or what are your interests and things like that, so that people can know more about you even if they haven't run into you in the
Yeah,
kitchen or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. That's really cool. That's a
But
really
it
good idea.
doesn't.
Yeah, having like a little like a mini poster, like I just imagine like a
Yeah,
little like a baseball card or something with your stats.
exactly. Yeah,
You
like
can
a little
hand it out to
persona
people.
card.
It's kind of yeah, exactly
Yeah.
a persona card. That makes more. That's probably more apt analogy for this audience. But for one of the things I'm kind of curious about, and I'm just thinking maybe I'm projecting here, but for people who work at a company for a long time. I feel like over time you can kind of get beat down. You have these ideas, these sort of values, and you bring them up, and you get doing that, or oh, don't worry about that. And I think over time, you sort of get desensitized. Not, well, it's desensitized, right? You maybe I don't want to say forget, but you sort of stop pushing those values so much, and you start to kind of let them slip a little bit. And I'm
Hmm.
curious from your perspective, if that's happened to you, and two, when that does happen, how do you deal with that? Do you have thoughts on how you
Yeah,
go
I
about making
mean,
sure that doesn't happen?
um, there's plenty of companies out there. I'm just kidding. Just leave. No, I mean, which is, like if an environment is really toxic and there is
Yeah,
no room for you to bring your authentic self to work over and over and over and
hmm,
over, it might just not be the right place for you.
yeah, that's certainly
Um,
true.
I mean, I know it's hard to think that in this environment where jobs are really hard to come by, that you would
Yeah,
say, no, I'm leaving. And, I can't. I mean, I have friends that have been looking for jobs for months and months and months,
yeah,
and they're really talented people. So I
yeah,
know that it's
exactly.
not easy to leave a place. And that's why I was thinking about, or I was talking before about this thing about having uncomfortable conversations. And when
Hmm.
that is, you don't see that that's going to go anywhere or whatever. I think that if the environment is such that you're feeling that way, there's, I'm sure there are other people that are feeling that way as well. And I'm not saying that, you just have to be miserable together and whatever. But I think that, we are designers. We are people that come up with solutions all the time. So, you know, getting together with other people and saying, just doing a design thinking exercise on it, and saying,
Yeah.
okay, what's our problem? These are our problems. What are the things that, we can do about it? We can just like, talk to people. We can, make a list of things that are getting in the way. And then, just find opportunities. What are the opportunities for change?
Mm.
Because if you're feeling that way, the likelihood of other people feeling the same way
That's
is
true.
high.
Yeah.
And getting together with those people and saying, okay, what solutions can we bring to the table? Because I don't know of any companies that they don't want to make things better in
Right.
some way.
Nobody's like,
I mean,
we're gonna have the worst culture ever. You know, he's just really excited. That's their goal, is to have the worst culture.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you can come up with some ideas as a
Hmm.
group of saying, look, we have these issues here. Here are some solutions. And if you don't
Yeah.
like these solutions, can we come to the table and come up with solutions together? You know, because I think that people get very discouraged when they try to go about it on by themselves.
Right. Yeah.
You
You know
know,
what?
it's like, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one of the things I was thinking about too was like, you're in like a long-term relationship, and when you first start dating somebody, you do all kinds of fun stuff. You go out, you have fun, you do adventurous things, and then slowly over the years, the spark just sort of, fades a little bit, and then suddenly, maybe 10 years later, you're just in bed, you're both looking at your phone, you're not even having a conversation, one word to each other, and you're just like, wait a
Texting to
minute,
each
we
other.
we used to be fun. We used to do fun stuff. What do we do? What happened to us? And I just kind of think about that in, when you're young and you're just idealistic and you have these values. And I think about people who've been in their career for a long time, and you get to the point where you forgot maybe what those values were, and you just kind of,
Yeah,
maybe sleepwalking, maybe you're just like kind of going through the motions. And
sure.
I'm just curious, like, is that ever been some, like, did you ever, like, because, I'm thinking about your background, like being this like revolutionary, sticking it to the man. And then suddenly you're just sitting there and you're like, I'm writing this other stupid email, and like, what happened? I used to be a revolutionary. I'm just curious, like, how do you keep that
Yeah,
spark alive? You know what I mean? How do you keep
yeah.
that spark alive?
Well, there's two things that come to mind around that. One is, and it kind of relates to the one thing that you were talking about before, which is um, having the little persona card, which is like at Primitive Spark, we once a year we do an advance, which is kind of like a retreat, but it's an advance because we don't retreat, we go
Oh,
forward,
I love
whatever.
that. I love that.
So during our advance, we do what it's called the whole person exercise, and everybody does
Hmm.
it, right? And so it's kind of like that persona card, but deeper. It's really
Hmm.
about what is it that moves you? What are the challenges that you have and you want people's help on? What are the things that you really want to do that you haven't done? And, you have like these personal goals around, etc. And so that is kind of like a checkpoint for yourself, So you're saying, okay, yeah, I've been in this job, industry, whatever, 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 for a long time. That is a way of keeping yourself current with your values and kind of like saying, okay, I have these values. What am I doing? What behaviors am I doing to be in line with those values? Like if creativity is one of my values and I haven't done anything creative in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, okay, it might not be one of their values anymore because you're really not doing anything towards that, right? So I think it's that constant reassessment of what your values are, what you're doing towards your values, and are is that bringing you any joy? Like really taking it into your own hands to doing that. So that's like one part of it. The other part is, you're asking me personally, well, this is one of the reasons why we started, Primitive Spark and the other agencies that I had before that is that we wanted to create a space which was, politics free, that we worked with people that had similar values, including our clients, right? Because
Yeah,
if we
that's
work with
important.
someone and, because we're an agency, right? We have clients. If we work with clients that are not aligned with our values, like we're just seeing that it's just not going to work, or we did a project and it wasn't really aligned for us, then we have to part ways, because it doesn't mean that they're good or bad. It just means that there is no true alignment. And for us to be, I'm not saying happy, because happy is, I don't know, I just
Yeah,
have
I know
this
what you
thing
mean.
about happy. But
Right.
if there isn't fulfillment
Fulfillment. I like that. Yeah.
in the relationship that you have with your coworkers, with your company, within your company, or with clients, or however the structure is with the people that you work with every day, then there is a problem. You're in the wrong place. You're not doing what you're meant to do. I
Right.
truly believe that if you are aligned with your purpose, and I actually, purpose is kind of a big word. And I've struggled many years with saying, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And the
Yeah.
thing is that people think about purpose as like, oh, I have to go to, some third world country and, help people that are hungry and poor and whatever. And that's my purpose. It doesn't have to be that, right? It has to be aligned with your values. Your values is what points at your purpose.
Yeah.
So, I can be doing my purpose here with you, talking
Sure.
right
Yeah.
now, right? And my purpose can be like, how do I talk to my cats? you know, I
Uh-huh.
mean, my purpose is all around me, because it is based on my values, and it is based on how I show up for people and those that I have relationships with. In relationships, I mean, friends, family,
Sure. Yeah.
coworkers, clients, whatever it is. And I think that that is really what we need to remember. And you're saying, about spouses, right? And I think that it's that continuous conversation and communication with them about what is it that we're doing that is not aligned with the things that we set out to, and if
Yeah.
those have to change over time, then it changes over time. You know, that's what this, when you were talking about my bio thing about unfolding, right? We talk a lot about growth, but growth means that we're not complete, that we're not there, you know? It's like this thing that we're always have to become. And I agree that we are always becoming, but I think that it's more related to unfolding who we truly are all the time,
Like
because we are
unwrapping and
whole.
finding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because we are whole the way that we are. We are
Sure.
not missing anything.
Right.
We just
Right.
need to discover and have that curiosity to be able to see all the gold and all the light that we have inside of us. And if we can just bring all that gold and all that light with us, then nothing is going to stop you,
Yeah.
because people see that and it's magnetic.
I like that adjective magnetic though, because it like attracts and stuff. One of the things that I just want to call out, I like that you brought up is, you guys, you go off and you do your advance. I love it. It's not a retreat, it's advance. So you go off and you do this, but it's intentional. And I think a
Oh, yeah.
lot of people, they end up in that sort of states, sitting and texting their spouse or just going through the motions, sleepwalking, not because they ever wanted to, but it's more because they got there. They just ended up there, and then you think, how on earth did we get here? How did I get here? I used to be, different. I used to have more passion, and I think that's interesting because a lot of companies don't do that activity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Smaller. Actually, I worked in an agency, a small agency, and we did, but it was like 10 of us, so it was a lot easier to go and book,
Exactly.
book a few rooms at a fancy hotel for a weekend. But a lot of like people that end up working at big companies and stuff. This is never something that anyone does. And over time, you kind of get to the point where you're never really thinking about it anymore. You're just going through the motions and just doing every day. And it's not necessarily, it's interesting because I'm just thinking about how would you do that in a large company. I think it's just sort of on you to go and take a break 6 months every year, whenever it is, and think about these things and do it for yourself. Because if your company's not going to help you do it, nobody's going to do it if you don't do it yourself, So it's kind of interesting having like a one-person retreat, but just, going off and thinking about this, detach from the world for a weekend if you can, it might be hard if you have kids and stuff, but just sort of thinking about that and being intentional about
Yes.
looking at your current state and say, is this where I wanted to be a year ago? Am I here? And did I actually do what I thought I wanted to do? Did I get there? Did I achieve the things? Did I, hold true to my values? So I don't know. It's kind
Yeah.
of interesting though, that idea.
I think that if your company doesn't do it, so if you are a leader of any size team at your company,
Mm-hmm.
so if you're, if you have like a group of 3 designers, 10 designers, whatever it is, or if you're, have some developers or, whoever you are, because, companies, yeah, they're big, right? They have like, oh, 10,000 people, but it gets broken down to smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller teams, right? So there are these atomic groups
I
that,
like that. Yeah, I like that analogy. Yeah.
right? And so if you have a few designers or whatever it is, a small group, you can do that, and I know
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of companies is like, well, it's not part of the, projects, or it's not a part. Listen, we do a lot of things that are maybe not within, the, take an hour. I mean, it doesn't take that long, right?
That's true.
To
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm going to give you this homework. It's this sheet of paper that says, okay, think about this, 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 and this, right? And then on Friday, we're going to have a coffee morning or whatever of an hour and a half, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what's important, and we're going to talk about, what it's part of mentoring. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of, the how do you keep your teams happy? This is part of it. Getting to know them at a
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
level. It is part of the job. You know, it, it it's not a mystery. Just getting to know the people that are around you is one of the most important things to keep to make a group productive. I am telling you, it helps, because if I know that the person in my team is going to go to the doctor, and they're concerned about what the doctor is going to say, because there's like some kind of, you know, thing. And they have a deadline. I can say, "Hey, I know that you're going through this thing. You might not be able to make that deadline. Do you need help for that?" I can tell you that person is going to give 200%
Yeah.
next week or whenever it is, because you did that for them.
Yeah.
So this is
I
important. We are people, you
yeah.
know?
I don't
It
I cannot
helps.
remember who did this study. I want to say it was Google.
Google,
It was the high
Google.
performing team. It was at Google, yeah. And they did that study. For those who aren't aware, obviously you are, but for everybody who's not aware, they did this study that they found the highest performing teams were not the teams with the smartest people or the most talented, quote unquote talented people. It was the teams who got along best. The teams who liked each other outperformed the ones full of really smart, talented people who didn't play well together, really.
They
And so,
didn't know
it
each
kind of,
other,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so
Yeah,
those people that built those relationships, they worked well together. They solved problems faster. They were able to collaborate and get things done.
yeah.
And yeah,
Why?
and
Why? Because they were
yeah, go ahead.
authentic.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
were
Yeah,
authentic, right?
yeah,
They were bringing their whole selves to work. And
yeah.
I know it's a very vulnerable, especially if the environment is not set up that way, right?
Uh huh. Yeah.
And you're the lonely designer with all these thoughts. Oh, I think that it would be better if we did it this way.
Uh
Well,
huh.
start from there. Start with
Yeah.
your fellow designers, you know?
Yeah. Now
And
let me ask.
and when,
Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, and when, your manager, your leader, whatever, they see that you're, like you're this kick-ass team,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to get curious and they're going to say, what's going on here? How come you guys suddenly you just like started like giving, everything you have to this thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you can say, well, we actually started talking to each other and we know that, so and so has a cat, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So,
It's important.
one of the this reminds me, and I'm thinking back to my experience and some of the things that you're talking about. And I work for a giant company. I work for GE, which is huge multinational conglomerate. And I'm thinking back to before COVID. I worked on a team that I love my current team. My current team is amazing, but this team that I worked on till the day that I die, I am convinced will be the best team I've ever worked with.
Oh,
We worked
I
so
love
incredibly
that.
well together. We got along really well, and I'm going to place all the blame on that in a good way on our product manager, Brittany. She had an amazing idea to bring the team together. We took 2 days off work, and we somehow managed to convince our leadership to make that okay. We took 2 days
Hmm.
and we figured out what our team's principles were and our core principles and our core
Yeah,
values. And I am convinced that conversation and having those values made us a better team going forward because,
absolutely.
one, it helped us work together, but two, it helped us judge every candidate coming through the door on those principles.
Yes.
And what we would do is we actually had them review the principles and what do you think about this, and we would hear their insights. And the people who had who didn't really care that much, we're like, you know what, it's not for you. If they cared about other things, then they probably weren't the people for us. But the people who found those who resonated with those principles were the ones that we tended to hire, regardless of if they were the A students or the won the awards or went to some Ivy League school or something. These were the people. That's what we tended to judge them on. And I feel like that helped us become a better team. And we, everything got ripped apart when COVID
Absolutely.
happened, and we, everybody got laid off and we went our separate ways. But that was, to me, one of the best teams I've worked on, and I think it's because of those 2 days that we spent in a room together. To be honest, doing exactly
Yep.
what sounds like you're doing, the retreat essentially, and we thought about it, and we were really intentional going forward about it. And we promoted
Yes.
it. And you mentioned a second ago, I want to call this out, but it's the culture thing. It's the psychological safety, building that into the culture of the team, so that everybody can embrace these things and they can push back, when they feel something isn't going right, without the fear of being reprimanded or punished or in some way because they spoke up. And
Yeah.
I don't know. To your point, though, this was a gigantic corporation with thousands of employees, but our small team of 50 people were able to do this, and that's, I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of cool. It made me think of that. As you were first
Yeah.
talking about it, I didn't think of that, and then that just like struck me a second ago. I just want to call that out because I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was talking about when I was saying that, we find alignment within our team, with
Hmm.
our clients, the people that we work with. We have a lot of like development companies and such that are partners to us. And it's the same thing, if we see that while we're working with them, our values align, then
Hmm.
guess what?
Yeah.
Anytime we get a project, we're going to keep working with them, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
almost like you have this secret code, right? That you can
Yeah. Like a cheat code. It is, right?
it's yeah, it's like a cheat code, and it's
Yeah.
like you can go so much faster. This is the other thing, right? When you start creating these kinds of relationships with people, you can be so much more efficient. It's
Hmm.
because you develop that kind of uh, shortcut.
Like it.
You know,
Yeah, and it's sort of like an
it's
unspoken
it's
language a
amazing.
little bit, right?
That's
It's
right.
like a
That's
yeah,
right.
it's like you just kind of know what they're going to do and know what they're going to think, and it's amazing when you see this in action. It's sort of one of those things because like when it happens, it's amazing and it's beautiful, but nothing
Yes.
ever lasts. Nothing ever like people leave, they go off, they do their own thing, and eventually over time things change. And when you lose it though, it's just like heartbreaking, and then you want it so badly to be on your current team, but it's for one reason or another, it's just not the same way.
But
And
you can
yeah,
create
that's
it.
yeah, yeah.
See,
Well,
this
that's
is the
true. Yeah, you can
thing.
always create it again, can't you? Yeah.
We've had people, that left Primo Sparkle for one reason or another. And we have these stories of people
Mm-hmm.
going to these other workplaces, sometimes big companies, and they would say, you know what? The big company, whatever. Our team started implementing the things that I learned at Primitive Spark, and
Oh,
our
that's awesome.
team was kick ass.
Yeah,
And it's
that's awesome.
because we just created our own thing. And then, everybody wanted to work with us
Yeah.
because they saw how good we were, how good our work was, how we worked together. And everybody was like, how is it that that group is so much better than everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think that when you are in a situation like that and you learn all of these skills, you just take them to your new place and you
Yeah.
create because this is the thing. Whoever you have the power. You have more power than you think.
Right.
You can be that person that becomes a leader. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You're a
Yeah, sure.
leader when you lead by example, right? When you
Absolutely.
can model these behaviors to others and they see it and they want to be more like that. And, you can see where, you know, where you're not in alignment, that's what you want to change. Those are
Yeah.
the things that you want to change.
So this is something I like to tell people quite a bit when they're looking for work is you have more power than you think. You don't need to accept the
Yes.
offer simply because they gave it. So I want to ask you something about job hunting and finding that
Mm-hmm.
right company because as we just said, it's a culture thing. That culture either exists or it doesn't, right? There's some culture there. Either it's a good culture or a bad culture.
That's right.
As
Everybody has a culture.
yeah, as a job seeker, how do you figure out what that culture is before you accept the offer? Because what you don't want to do is get the offer and then realize it was bad. Are there some techniques or tips or tricks to investigate that culture before you accept the offer so you know what you're getting into?
Several things you can do. One, you can see through LinkedIn, for example, if you know
Mm-hmm.
anybody in that company.
Right.
So that's one place to start. Or even if you have like a second level connection of some sort, you can say, "Hey, Jeremy, I see that you know someone at Chewy. Can you put me in
Mm-hmm.
touch with them so that I can, kind of check out what they're." Another way that pretty interesting for me, like you're talking about Chewy, and the personality of a company comes across on
Mm,
how they present themselves online,
that's true. Their
right?
brand and stuff. Yeah.
If they're true to their brand, right? Because brand is not just the logo or the color palette or
Yes,
what
exactly. Yeah.
typeface they use, right? Their brand holds their mission and their values. And if they're true to their mission and their brand, it's going to come across on their products, on their websites. Obviously, they can lie about it,
Right.
and that's kind of hard.
Yeah.
But I have to say that, when Chewy has like some videos, of their products, or, you can just like watch that and say, okay, how many chili peppers do they have on their content?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of shows something. Or how do they approach, go into their website and see what they support. Every
Yeah.
like big companies have, organizations they support, how much effort do they put into making that known? Do they have scholarships for kids? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that might be as caring.
Right.
So, that's another way. And then, you can just like dig into their history too, go online, see what, news stories are there about, what kind of press
Yes.
releases they have,
Yeah.
because whatever is on the news about them is usually something that, can give you either red flags or,
Right.
or kind of saying, oh man, I really like this company. I really
Yeah.
want, or what their
Yeah.
products, if it's a product like Headspace, let's say, you're like, well, I like what they do. I am interested in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
well, that's
I
just not aligned with my values.
I have a hard time believing that Headspace wouldn't promote mental health at work. You got
They
to believe
do.
that
Yeah.
some place like
Yeah.
that they're going to promote they're going to promote mental health.
Sure.
Obviously, well, some people may, but most people probably wouldn't want to work for a company that was caught like clubbing baby seals in the Arctic or something, right? I mean,
Right.
these are things you can obviously tell. One of the things that I try to tell people a lot
Mm,
too is, and this is something someone asked me not long ago, was something about they were afraid to put something on their portfolio, their resume, because they thought it wouldn't get them to the job. And my advice to them was like, would you want to work for that place if you knew that they wouldn't hire you because of it? Like if you were proud of this thing
easy.
and
Yeah.
you went and they offered you a job, but you knew that they wouldn't offer you the job if you kept doing that thing, would you still want to work there? And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you have so much power. Like you mentioned this exactly, but you have so much more power over these companies than you realize. I mean, at the very least, you have the power to just walk away. You don't
Absolutely.
have to accept a job. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to bend over backwards to impress these people. Bring your authentic self to work, obviously, but bring your authentic self to an interview. Wear whatever clothes you want to
Absolutely.
wear. Wear your hair however you want to go. Talk however you want to talk. And if that place
Yes.
doesn't hire you because of that, imagine working there. Imagine
Exactly.
faking it in an interview and then getting a job, and how much stress
Yeah.
that must put on you as you're working there, having to hide those things. So I remember somebody recently, I can't remember who it was, they posted about a recruiter didn't send a job offer to a perfectly qualified candidate because they didn't wear a suit to the interview. And I'm just thinking, like, good on them. Like, fine. Like, would that person have enjoyed working there if they had to wear a suit every day but didn't think it was worth wearing to an interview? That's probably not a very good fit personality wise,
Yeah.
right? So that, I mean,
Exactly.
they dodged
Yeah.
a bullet. I mean, that's fine. Like the company can do that. I think it's silly. I think they probably wasted the time. But if that's the culture of the company, that person probably would have been happy
Wouldn't
to
fit.
reject that
Anyway.
offer anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Yeah.
something too a lot of people don't realize is, that culture can come through in those interviews. When you ask them a question, you ask them a hard question in an interview because as an interviewee, sorry, you should be asking questions back. And a lot of people don't think about this, but when you ask them a hard question, that hiring panel, and they dismiss it or they come back with some kind of like, short answer, or they try to, argue with you about something, you could probably get a good sense for what that would be like if you asked a hard question in a meeting, and so
Yeah.
I think you have a lot
Totally.
more power to figure those things out. You mentioned LinkedIn. I think that's a really great one. I recommend that all the time, is going out and talking to people who work there now, but also used to work there. You left. Why'd you leave?
Oh, yeah,
What
exactly.
happened? And LinkedIn is great because you can search for former
That's right.
employees of a company. So you can actually go and target former employees specifically. And, so they could say, oh my God, it was the most toxic environment ever. I hated it,
Right.
or they might say, oh, I had to move and I wish I would have never left. It's an amazing place. Let me introduce you to the people that work there now. So
Exactly.
doing that investigation, I think is so important. But I love that what you said though. You've got so much more power than you think. You don't have to stay in a toxic environment. You don't have to accept a job offer. Obviously, right now, job market's kind of weird, and maybe
Yeah,
you got to weigh that a little bit. Like, I need to pay my rent versus, what's my mental health
exactly.
worth? Work for a few months while I keep looking for another job if I take this job. But yeah, I love that idea though. You just you have more power. I think you said this last time. The company doesn't own you. you know,
They really
um,
don't.
yeah,
Yeah,
and a
they
lot of
really
people feel
don't.
they do. That's sad.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, like there's a lot of things that we talk about and the way that we say these things sometimes I think about, I'm an introvert and for people that are quiet and introverted, I think it's very challenging to do these
Mm,
things, to show up because their authentic self is being that quiet person, right?
it's
And
true. Yeah.
being kind of like, you know, observant and, kind of reserved. And so, what are we saying? Are we saying that they have to become this person that is outgoing and sharing and this and that? It doesn't have to be like that.
Hmm.
Even if you're quiet and you're introverted, you can find ways if you think that it's important to you, right? If you think that working at Headspace is really important to you and you want to have that kind of experience of working in a team like that at that company, there are things that you might have to look at in a different way
Yeah.
in saying, okay, just because I'm introverted and I'm quiet and I'm observant, what are the things, or maybe some of those things, how can you present them as valuable to the company or to the team? Like,
Hmm.
because I am quiet and observant, I can actually see what's going on in a meeting without even saying anything. And after the meeting, I can communicate my insights to you in a separate document, or in a chat or whatever it is. Like, how can you use those things as superpowers? My superpower is being an observant person.
I love
Okay,
that. Yeah.
okay. That means that you can see things that other people don't see.
Yeah.
Okay, how can you show that value to the people in your team? you
I love
know
that.
and
Yeah.
so it's just like, it's because sometimes I know that there's this tendency of people saying that you have to be extroverted, you have to be out there, you have to show up, you have to be communicative, and all of these things that are super hard for people that are introverted. And so look at what are the things that are your superpowers and how you can bring them as a benefit to your team. And I
Yeah.
assure you that you're going to bring things that other people are not thinking about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean that's something too. A lot of people, again, like you have the power. You have more power than you think. That goes like so many things. It's not just like accepting a job or quitting a company. I mean, the power to change the minds, to influence people, to you know uh, push for processes that you think. At certain points, you may hit a brick wall and you may hit a dead end, and you
Yeah.
may not be able to do those things. But at least you tried. Don't
Yes.
assume you just can't make the changes. And I just love that. I think that's just such an amazing thing to kind of to think about for sure.
Hmm.
All right. So what else? Anything else before? I think we feel like we've been talking for a little while. We talked a lot about finding your values, bringing those values to work, being authentic. Anything else you feel junior designers, career shifters, somebody like that needs to know about values and bringing their authentic self to work?
Yes, I have a couple of things
Oh
actually.
yeah, go ahead.
One is about that clarity of what you want and what you need. So
Hmm.
if you are someone that is just starting or with changing jobs, whatever it is, I think that having that clarity of what your goals are, what
Mm.
you want to accomplish, what you want to be when you grow up. And I'm not saying this from an age perspective, but more
Right.
of
Mature as you
from a
grow. Yeah,
career
sure.
perspective, right? There are people that want to go up the ladder, right? They want to say,
Hmm.
okay, I'm starting as a junior designer, when I become a designer, senior designer, design director, whatever, right?
Hmm.
But there are other people that they just want to go deep and just
Hmm.
become the best designer they can be. They don't really want to go up the ladder. They don't want to be the chief creative officer. They just want to
Yeah.
be really good at their craft. And to be good at your craft, if that is the clarity that you found, that that's what you want to do, then going broader in understanding as much as you can about the other disciplines that you play with, right? Because the best teams are the ones that can collaborate in a very deep way. And for you to collaborate, like if I'm collaborating with a developer and I'm a really good designer, the more I know about how they go about doing their job is going to create this relationship between the two of you and
Yeah.
say, as a developer, they're going to go the extra mile to try to figure out that design that you're trying to implement, even if it's hard, because you're trying to understand, you're having a conversation with them, you're initiating this collaboration with them. And so I think that, anyway, I'm going too deep onto that, but having this clarity about what you want
Yeah.
and where, what's the end game, even if it changes, it doesn't matter if it changes later, right? But what is that? Having that clarity, it helps you. And sometimes you have to go at a roundabout way to get in there. I've done
Hmm.
plenty of those. Like nothing is a straight line. I get that. But, if you have that up there. You can, even if you're going in a circular kind of way, you'll get there. And then the other thing that I was thinking was important is, and it was more about when we were talking about how do you go about it when the job just doesn't feel good, or you've been there for a long time and things are just like not gelling for you. There's something that I learned recently that is about the difference between being responsible for something and responsible to others. When you're being responsible, when you feel like you're responsible for things, it's a heavy feeling. It's like you're carrying things for other people. You feel tired, you feel anxious, you feel fearful, liable, all of these things. And you're you're really worried about, performance details, circumstances, this and that. But when you're responsible to other people, then you show up in a different way. You can show empathy, you can show comfort, you can be sensitive, you can listen to people. And then, the way that if you're taking on things, or if you're just being responsible for the things that you're doing, then you're feeling more relaxed. It's a lighter kind of feeling. Like you can actually see the solutions. You can, relate to people in a different way. Uh, you can see people clearer because you are clear about what you're responsible for. And if you don't know what you're supposed to be responsible for, that's a clear one. That's another one, right? That when you're feeling like your manager is not happy with what you're doing or whatever it is, just have a clarifying meeting saying, I think that my job is about this, 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 and this. Is that
Setting
right?
expectations, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
Well,
right? What kind of
this is,
expectation do you have for me? Because
yeah,
if you have that clarity, then you don't have to be responsible for other people, and you can just be responsible for yourself
yeah, and
to other people with what you bring to the table. And you know that what you're bringing to the table is what you're expected to bring to the table, and
yeah,
not like all of this other fantasy stuff that you might be bringing in, the stories that you're making.
yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
another important part.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned that, and that's the setting expectations. I think is really important, especially for low maturity teams where there's a
Yeah.
lot of product managers or stakeholders who don't really understand how to work with UX designers, and that can become a very toxic environment if you don't take active measures to try to keep it from getting worse. Obviously, with UX maturity, there's a certain level. Again, just like the other things, you might hit a brick wall, and there might be people who just will not change. But I like to assume positive intent and assume people don't always do things maliciously. So using that mindset, I like to have these one-on-ones, like a lot of people, they just ignore one-on-ones, or they treat one-on-ones like a manager subordinate status update, where to me, though, one-on-ones are things you should be having with your entire team,
Yeah.
product managers,
Oh,
stakeholders,
absolutely.
whoever. And those are great, especially when you first join a team and start working together, setting expectations up front. This is what I think my role is. This is what I would like to deliver. This is how I think I can help you, help the product, help the business, whatever it is. And you have that conversation together. What are your expectations for what I would do
Yep.
for you or help you, or how would my role work with you? And you get them to answer the same questions back about their role. And I think like that's a really great way to start off a relationship. A lot of times people come in with, especially junior designers, butting heads with stakeholders and product managers all the time. I mean, look at Figma Config a couple weeks ago, where everybody cheered when they announced that, Airbnb was getting rid of their product management function.
I
That's
know.
shameful to
That
me,
was
right? I mean,
interesting.
that's
Were
shameful. I
you
mean, that's
there?
so sad. No, but I heard about it.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I was there.
Everybody was talking about it on social media, but now I'm in the Midwest. I didn't make a trip out to LA for that. I wish, but no.
It was
Yeah,
San
but that,
Francisco.
yeah,
Yeah.
was it? Oh, San Francisco. Yeah, California.
Yeah.
So it's all the same to me. It's all West Coast somewhere. Might as well be LA. But yeah, like that whole, thing to me is like shameful. Like, what does it say about the culture of these places where a lot of these designers who applauded that work? what is their relationship like with their product team? I bet it's terrible.
Yeah.
I bet they don't get along at all, and I bet they're just constantly fighting with each other, and they probably hate it. And you know, we're partners. We shouldn't be fighting, you know? And so that just like, to me, again, goes back to everything we've been talking about with like, what are our values? Are our values to like push our agenda on another team? Or our values to collaborate and work together and build the best thing together, you know, that we can. And anyway,
It's also
I don't know.
about respect,
Setting expectations
though.
is so important. Yeah.
It's also about respect,
Mm-hmm.
because if there is a cultural setting of respect for the different disciplines, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like in some places, you know, maybe designers are not being taken into consideration, you know, and they're being brought in, you know, like maybe it's a developer-led kind of environment, right? And they say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you know, we developed this, now you have to make it look pretty, right?
Right.
Or research is not valued, or product management is not valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is something that is more of a company culture
Yeah.
responsibility, to make sure that all of the disciplines respect each other.
Yeah. The
Because
respect is
as
huge. Yeah.
soon as there is this hierarchy placement, you know, like product is at the top and they,
Right.
you know, whatever they say goes, you
Yeah.
know. Okay, what is informed? You know, how do they get informed by, you know, whatever they say goes? You know, where
Mm-hmm.
does it come from? Does it
It's a
come from
guess,
the
usually.
C-suite?
It's a
Well,
guess.
you know, where does the guest
Yeah.
come from, right? I
Where does the
mean,
guess come
yeah,
from? That's true. The C-suite,
you
probably. Yeah. The
know,
executives. Yeah. Leadership team.
someone is guessing, you know,
Yeah.
obviously, especially if the, you know, UXR is very immature, you know, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be plenty of guesses. But I think that respect, you know, in showing that no, we're not going to allow that here,
Mm-hmm.
is important.
Yeah.
Because if you have respect, then all of these other things start working better. And I think to tell you the truth, I think at Airbnb, what happened was that there was an imbalance, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's why that happened. And so, you know, and he didn't really get rid of
Right. I know
product
that's the other thing
management, right?
too. They misunderstood.
It was,
He combined the
it
two
was
separate.
a,
Right. Yeah.
well,
The
it
product
was
marketing and
more
product management.
realigning what
Yeah.
product managers did, and
Mm-hmm.
not having them, you know, have like all of this power over
Mm-hmm.
everything else, because it
Yeah.
has to be something that is more balanced. And so
Yeah.
I think balance and respect is very important in every company. If not, you're going to have some serious problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, we've been talking for a little while. I want to be conscious of your time. I don't want to take too much of your time. I got
Yeah,
some
sure.
questions I want to ask you, but before we do that, tell everybody out there listening, where can they find you? Where can they get more information about you and Primitive Spark and all that stuff? Give all your
Okay.
stuff a little shout out.
Okay. Well, if you just go to LinkedIn, Wendy Nyx, you can find me, and NYX. And primitivespark.com is our agency. And, you know, I am also on ADP list if you want to schedule some time for
Awesome.
mentoring. So, yeah,
Right on.
that's it.
Cool. And we
I'm
will
I'm not
include.
on
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not
Go
on
ahead.
X or Facebook
Oh
or
yeah, X.
none
You're
of
the
that.
first person that I've like talked to that referenced it as X. I still say Twitter. It'll always it'll always be
It
Twitter
took
to me.
it took some cognitive work to actually
Oh,
say
good
it, but
God. Yeah.
whatever. We're not going to
I'm the
go
same
there.
way. LinkedIn is about all. Yeah, right. LinkedIn is about all I can
Yeah,
handle. I feel like my brain can't handle more social
that's
media
right.
than that. Yeah,
Yeah.
X. Ugh, don't get me started on that. We'll talk
Oh, you
another
know
hour about
what? We're
X.
going to, oh, never mind. I was going to say
With
we have a collaboration discussion coming up, and that it's on LinkedIn, but this is going to air
yeah, what
after.
the dates? What are the dates of that?
It's next week,
Oh yeah, this will be out
next
in a
Friday.
in a
Yeah,
month or
never
so. Yeah,
mind.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, if you do more of those, do you want to give a shout out of future? Maybe you say like we do these, but we might do more. I don't know if you want to say that. If not,
Yes.
I'll just edit this out. No, okay, that's fine. All right, Wendy, awesome. Well, I will include all that stuff in the show notes so everybody can find you and get in touch. But I've got a few questions here that I like to ask all my guests, so all the listeners out there can get to know my guests a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. What is your favorite non-design book?
Well, you talked already about the Big Magic one.
I did, yes.
Gifts of Imperfection from Brene Brown.
Mm.
That one is, I kind of go back to that one all the time. It has like these guideposts, and I don't know, it just like helps me get back in touch with myself when I feel a
Yeah.
little bit lost.
I love Brene Brown too. Yeah, she's great and it's funny. Well, not funny, interesting. Maybe this is a connection, but the product manager, Brittany, that I was talking about, that organized that event where we all kind of got together and thought about our core values. She is a huge Brene Brown fan, and I had never heard of Brene Brown until she mentioned it to me like 5 or 6 years ago. So anyway, it's amazing. I go on like almost my whole life without knowing who Brene Brown was. But anyway, I don't know, that maybe that's an interesting thing, coincidence. I don't know if that's causation,
Yep.
correlation. Who knows?
Yep.
All
All
right.
of
What
her
is your
thoughts
favorite
there.
non-design podcast?
Yeah, that would be Your Undivided Attention.
Mm.
It's from the Center for Humane Technology. I know it's not specifically about design, but it is about our responsibility
Mm.
towards what we're creating. But they always have like these very interesting guests. Like this week, they had Esther Patel. That
Oh,
she,
cool.
she usually talks about relationships and things like that. And so I
Hmm.
was like, well, this is a different one. And it was really interesting. Actually, she talked a lot about things that I've been thinking about. And so, anyway, so she calls it the other AI, or artificial intimacy, and how we are
Oh,
creating
interesting.
all of these things
Yeah.
online that are kind of parallels to real life, but they're not really. And so we're creating all these new mental models around,
Yeah.
friends and followers and things like that that are just like not real. And
Yeah.
and and it's not creating real community, and it's just like not very
It
good for
reminds
us
me,
as
yeah,
humans.
that reminds me of something recently I read. Meta was working on like chat bots to like comment on your posts on Facebook and stuff.
Yes.
And it just seems like that to me strikes me like artificial intimacy. Like obviously it's not, intimate, but like
Yeah, yeah,
fake
yeah, yeah.
friends. I just, it's so bizarre to me. Like I don't want a fake interaction. It's like I'm
Yep.
just doing it for likes because like the AI bot liked it. It just seems so bizarre to me. I don't know. That kind of,
Yeah. It
I
was a
can't
good
stand that
episode.
stuff. It's
It
so
was
weird. I have
just
to check
this
that out.
week.
All
They
right, I'll
have
have
it
to go
every
back and
two
look at it.
weeks. Yeah.
All right, what is your favorite vacation spot?
See, that one is tricky, right? Because I am kind of a person that's like, do I feel like a beach kind of relax vacation, or do I
Hmm.
feel like a,
Yeah, it depends what you're in the mood for. Yeah.
city, museums, culture, kind of thing. So I like places that have kind of like the mix of things, so that I can, just like go into nature, but also, have like this more cultural kind of a thing. So yeah, I like places that have a mix that I can do both.
I love that. Yeah, I like going somewhere where I can have a sit in a coffee shop and like hang out. You know,
Oh
that's
yeah,
like my
those are
ideal
nice.
vacation. Just some like a new coffee shop with,
Yeah.
something new and interesting to look at across the street or something.
I'm going to this dream vacation in October, which is a yoga retreat in Cambodia,
Oh,
and
nice.
then I'm going to go and spend some time in Bali, which I've been
Ooh, yeah.
before, and I just absolutely love it. So that's just going to be a dream come
That's
true.
awesome. I've never been to Bali, but it looks beautiful on the movies that I've
Oh,
seen Bali. So
I love
it looks
Bali.
nice.
It's just
It looks
so
great in pictures.
spiritual, and
Yeah,
it's good for the soul.
that's awesome. It's a great place to do an advance in Bali if
Yes.
you're gonna
Yes.
1 year.
Yes.
You gotta get some more clients maybe for that. That sounds expensive.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
what is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
Yes. My sketchbook.
Sketchbook, pen and paper. I
I
love it.
I love just I have like all these different pens
Yeah,
and pencils and color pencils and
I love it.
watercolors and whatnot. And yeah, I that's one of the things that I miss about the digital space, that I spend
Yeah,
all of this time on the computer, and I
I know.
really like, I'm a very tactile kind of a person. working with
Yeah,
my
I love
hands.
that. One thing I
Yeah.
miss about advertising were the paper shows. Where you go and get free lunch and all the paper samples. I used to love. I'd have like a
Oh my
library of paper
God.
samples, and my wife is actually a
Yes.
graphic designer too. And we would go to the paper shows together, and we would each get a Nina book, and like, ooh, look at this milk paper.
Oh, yes. I know. I'm
Um,
a geek
so
of
all right,
paper too.
here's a question. All right, for your sketchbook, is it blank, lined, or dot graph? What do you like?
Okay, so I have several. So if it's true sketching,
I guess you
plain.
wouldn't use lines, yeah, plain. Okay.
Yeah. My journals, I like having small kind of lines,
Mm,
just like not the big spaced out ones,
yeah.
but like really, because I write small and so that works for me. But yeah, so I have a kind of I have my personal journal, and that one is lined, but I do draw on that one quite a bit. I
Mm,
have my sketchbook, which is plain, and then I have my kind of work notebook, which is also lined, but I also draw on that one when they're like small things that I want to
yeah.
do.
Doodles
But then
during
when I
meetings.
want to go, yeah, but when I want to go out more, then I do the my sketchbook. So
There you go.
yeah.
I'm a dot graph fan myself. I've got like
Mm,
all these little field notebooks. Well, that one isn't a
yeah,
graph, but anyway,
yeah,
I
I
got
like those.
all these little field notebooks with the dot paper because it's like it's not super intrusive with the lines. I can sort of write at like
Yes.
sort of horizontally,
Yeah.
but you can still
Yeah.
draw over it and it doesn't look so bad with the.
Yeah,
So
I have a
I'm a fan
couple
of
of
dot graph.
those actually. I have one here, a spiral one that I use sometimes, but I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with the dotted ones.
There you go. All right. Awesome, Wendy. All right, cool. So we're gonna put all the links so everybody can find you on ADP list, LinkedIn, and Primitive Spark. We'll put that in the show notes. Really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much for all your insights. This is super valuable.
Thank you, Jeremy. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that people support you so that you can keep doing this because it is amazing for our UX community. Thank you
Right
for
on.
doing that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Awesome, Wendy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.